That's a lot faster. Maybe I should have done this for all of it. Not So Average Builder is brought to you by these great retailers. There'll be promo codes in the description below. I know I've touched on a video on this before, but we're going to retouch on this because it was a pretty popular video, and I want to show you some of the techniques I've learned over the years to better your water slide decals. I see too many people absolutely terrified of water slides. You don't need to be terrified of these. They are super simple. The only thing that you have to worry about is if you have a heavy hand with something, you can tear them. So the things you'll need are a good pair of tweezers. These are not a good pair, but this shows you that even with a crappy pair of tweezers, you can still do it. You will need a hobby knife or a good pair of scissors. I would recommend a hobby knife. For decades, I used scissors, and I don't know why I never thought to use a hobby knife, but yeah, you can use scissors. A hobby knife is going to work a lot better because you can cut out each individual piece instead of having to cut to it and then cut around it. So a good hobby knife is key. Now, to make your life a lot easier, you don't need these. For years I did not use them, but if you want to make your life a heck of a lot easier, especially if you have something that has a lot of bigger decals, you will need a setting solution. So for this scenario, I'm using Microset and Microsol from Microscale Industries. You can get these at your local hobby town. Trying to talk Adam into carrying these because I've not used the Mr. Set decal softener, whatever, but I have used these for, close to 10 years, and I absolutely love them. I've had zero issues with them. They work wonderfully. They can also remove decals if you need to. They can re-wet them if you need to remove them or move them around. Say you get them placed and you're like, oh no, that's not where that's supposed to be. Microset can help you. Microsol is the second part to this. So if you've got a complex surface, luckily on the Stein there isn't a whole lot of decals that go on complex surfaces, but something has a lot of grooves, channels, panel separation, and you want that decal to lay in there flat. And I see a lot of people skip decals until after they've panel lined because they can never get them to set down in those grooves. Well, with these two, that solves that issue. So basically, what we're going to be working on is the back of the leg right here. And then what I'm going to do after I show you this, just kind of do a time lapse of the rest of the decals, and then we'll talk about panel lining and the extra step if I have time. If not, I may have to make this another video. Those are the two decals I need. So one of the mistakes that I've seen as well is people leave these in the water. You can do that, but it ends up being more of a hassle than anything else. So what you want to do, you just want to take your tweezers, stick it in the water for about 6 to 7 seconds. If it's warm water, you only need 5 seconds. But if it's cold water like what I've got, you just need to do a little bit longer, so 6 to 7 seconds. Pull it out, set it somewhere on your mat, and leave it. We're going to do the same thing with this one. And sometimes I find it's a lot easier, especially when you're working with setting solutions, to go ahead and have two decals going at once. If you're not using the setting solutions and you're just using water, then I'd probably stick to just one because they will dry out pretty quick. And if they dry out and you have no way to remove them, then that can be issues. Now the places we're going to put them is right here and right here. So normally if you're not using a setting solution, you want to use just straight water, take a Q-tip, wet it down, and put it in the place. However, since we're using a setting solution, we're just going to dab some on here in the two places that we need, and we'll let it sit. Now the setting solutions do evaporate pretty quick, so I typically put a couple of globs. It's really thin, but I put a couple of globs in the space that I need and let it sit. What that does is that allows it to sink down into any deformities in the paint and level itself out. So when you put your decal on there, that setting solution sucks it into those little recesses, so it looks painted on. So no matter if you've got defects in the paint and it's not exactly smooth, it will help to make that look painted on, because that's the goal of these things. Water slides are better than stickers. And in my opinion, they're a little bit better than dry transfers because they're still not as thick. They are incredibly thin, so that is where you can tear them if you've got a heavy hand. After a couple of seconds, I usually get it about 10-15. Check it. The decal slides on there with my finger. Now I use a hobby knife. This is where a second set of tweezers would probably come in handy a little bit better than a hobby knife. But I've been doing water slides for so long, I know how hard to push and how hard not to push. So if you're doing this, you could take the side of the knife and you just slide it off of there. You're not putting any pressure on the knife blade. Essentially all you're doing is just putting it where you need it to go. So once you get it, the decal should still be pretty movable. And if it doesn't move on the decal surface, start at the top. Once you get it pretty well lined up, and you can see I've got a little deformity in the paint there. Looks pretty even. Might need to come down. Perfect. And you take a Q-tip and gently put pressure and roll it up. So as you see, that bubble is gone. I thought it was a deformity in the paint. It wasn't. It was just a bubble of setting solution. Simple stuff. Once you get that on there, let's move this over here. You're going to re-dip in your softener or your setter. And you want to brush from the center outwards. Now, because this stuff can reactivate decals, it will seep underneath and it will cause the decal to move. So when you're doing this, don't put a whole lot of pressure. Let that sit. Looks like the stuff here evaporated. We'll pick that up and we'll start with decal number 2. You always check it. It moves. Check your placement where it's supposed to go. And that means we need to bring this up a bit. And if you get a decal like this that's moving too easily, just take your dry Q-tip, go to the edge, and it will suck out the moisture from underneath. Once you get it lined up, you'll repeat the process. And sometimes, even when doing that, you can move them. I've gotten lucky. I may have moved it up just a little bit. Perfect. Oh, see, I messed it up. And a lot of times, what will happen is if your Q-tip gets too soaked with water, it won't absorb the water as quickly. And what that can do is cause the decal to still be pretty movable because there's too much moisture underneath. So when you're letting your solutions set, don't touch them. Once you get it in your spot, you put your cover over top of it with your micro set or your other setting solution. Leave it. Let it dry completely. All these have had plenty of time to dry. So we're going to just leave them. Because if you mess with it too much, what's going to end up happening is you're going to mess the decal up. And once you do that, you're going to keep fighting and fighting and fighting. And eventually you're going to rip it. So get it to the point to where you want it to be, and put your set on top and leave it. Let it dry, let it suck down to the surface of the paint, and leave it. Now, if you have a complex surface, like a very curved surface, you may need to apply a micro set a couple of times. I typically do, on a flat surface, 1 to 2 times micro set, and once that dries, and if I have a very curved surface where the decal doesn't want to lay down, I'll do 3 to 4 times, letting them dry in between each application. Because if you do it too fast, you're going to move your decal, and then you're going to be mad because you're going to have to go through the whole process all over again. It is important, let this stuff dry. Once this dries, I think with as flat as that surface is, I'm just going to do it once, and that should be fine. Once that dries, we'll use the micro sol, and even on a flat surface, I'll do 3 to 4 times on this, just because it really helps to suck the decal down to your surface. However, I can speed this process along because I've already done the other leg. Now, it is very important, if you are going to use micro set and micro sol, have 2 dedicated brushes to each one and don't get them confused. The way I remember, my blue handled one goes for my sol, and my black handle goes for micro set. I think it just kind of happened that way, and I'm kind of stuck with it, but I could probably clean the brushes with a brush cleaning solution and not have an issue. But I've done this for years, and it's kind of stuck with me, so I'm going to continue with it. So you're going to dip your brush into the micro sol, and you're going to same thing, brush from the center out. And with them being completely dry, you can apply a little bit more pressure. You don't want to, put a whole lot, because it will, while it's soaking in, will reactivate the decal. And usually when a decal has been completely dry and you reactivate it, bad things happen. The decal does not want to go back the way it was. It'll deform. It's not pretty. I know I've touched on this in previous videos, but these will last you a long time. I've had these for quite a while, at least 10 years. And the only reason why I'm down so low on these was because I spilled them. And, it happens. And I've done, I was on a model car racing kick for a while, so tons and tons and tons of decals on the car body itself. And, using exclusively these products, I think it was down to maybe here on both of these. And I had the caps off, wasn't paying attention, and of course, all of it spilled out. This is all that was left of them, and I've been using these on 4 or 5 Gunpla now, and it's barely even made a dent in it. So these are a worthwhile investment that will greatly up your decal game. So I'll let those decals dry, and then we'll come back with the 3rd and 4th application, or 2nd and 3rd application, and I'll show you what they look like. It is slowly starting to dissolve, and that's what the micro sol does wonders with. It actually dissolves the carrier film to where the decal looks painted on. That's coat number 2. I think this isn't going to take too long, so we're just going to do a little decal magic. We're going to try something I've never tried before. Let's all say the magic words. And, yeah, something's changed. Oh, that's so much better. That's a lot faster. Maybe I should have done this for all of it. Man, it drastically changed the look of this kit. It made it look a whole lot meaner and just ready to kick some butt.